So tonight we're dealing with the famous quote in Parshat Bereishis when God says to Adam that you can eat bread from the sweat of your brow. And the question is this a blessing or a curse? So it's very clear from the sequence of events that's outlined in the Midrash and in the Talmud that this seems to be leaning towards a curse, because that wasn't the original offer that God made. God originally said to Adam, you can eat from all the grasses, and yes, there'll be thorns and thistles, but you can eat from all the grasses and gain your sustenance that way. And Adam's reaction was, in the Talmud it says he broke into a sweat. And in the Talmud, in the Midrash, he broke into a sweat. In the Talmud, he says he cried. But in both cases, he said to God, am I going to eat from the same trough as my animals? You're making me into an animal. I'm eating, grazing on grass like an animal. So then God said, okay, you can have bread. Eat bread, but you'll have to make bread from the sweat of your brow. And both in the Midrash and the Talmud, there's an opinion that says, too bad you didn't listen to the first one, the first offer, because this is a lot worse, a lot harder to bake bread, many more steps involved than just grazing on grass. So that's the way the Talmud and the Midrash approach it. However, in Chassidus, it takes into a completely different dimension. What it's all about is the dignity of man. That man wants to be able to work. Man wants to be elevated from the animal. And so it wasn't a curse, it was a blessing. And this is taken, or expressed, I should say, best by the Ramchal, when he says, he calls it the Nahama de Kisufa, which is known as the bread of shame. In other words, if you get your sustenance without working for it, you feel ashamed. And that's what this was all about. Man didn't want to be like an animal where you go out in the field and eat. He wanted to work for it and feel fulfilled from it. And that's really what you gain from this, especially bread, which is, as I said, so many processes involved in making it. An animal can't possibly do it. It raises our status above an animal, distinguishes us, and makes us work hard and get something, get a feeling of satisfaction for our work. And of course, anything that we work and toil for, especially studying Torah, you gain so much from it. So that's the approach of Chassidus. Now this, of course, is a common theme in the Torah. There's a famous law when it comes to charity, that if someone was very wealthy and is driving a Bentley and he lost all his money, we have to try, whatever is reasonable, to help him get another Bentley. Because if he drives a Chevy, he'll be a broken man. He needs to be at the same level of respect and dignity that he had before. It's derived from the pasuk, De machsro asher yachsar lo. What is the level of dignity that he's used to, what his needs are. It reminds me of a story of a very large organization, nonprofit organization in Israel, which helps feed the poor. They raise $40 million a year, and there's one person who actually runs it out of her home. And I once asked her, why is it that you have these big weddings? You sponsor these big weddings. I'm not saying they're very expensive, but they're large weddings. Wouldn't it be better to take that money and give it to the couple and say, have a modest wedding, and now you'll have something left over to live on? And she said to me, it's really about the dignity of the bride. Because yes, they already have come to grips with the fact that they're going to live a meager existence. But if she doesn't have the dignity of a nice wedding, that is really something that causes depression and breaks them. You really have to give them that start, that dignity. So what's interesting about all this is if we go back and sort of put on our Midrash glasses the way we're used to looking at things, we can now reinterpret everything that we saw before. Because when God said to Adam that you have to grazed like an animal. And Adam had this visceral reaction. He was humiliated. And God came along and said, okay, you can have bread. Seems like it was really a setup. God was trying to restore the dignity of Adam. And so in order to do that, he gave him something, a choice which he knew he would react strongly to, and then embrace the idea of working hard. And this would set Adam on the path, once he's been expelled from the Garden of Eden, set him on a path of how to feel and regain his dignity by working hard and getting satisfaction from his work. So again, it looks like it was the second best choice. It was actually a setup. Have a great Shabbos.